Do you feel, just one more question that comes to mind, do you still sense some reservations from certain customers when it comes to the cloud, like concerns about data sovereignty?
Security, governance. Yeah, those topics come up again and again, especially when it comes to handing over important company data. When handing data over to another provider, there are definitely issues that need to be addressed. But SAP also offers a solution to ensure that the data is stored in EU data centers, making it secure and compliant.
I recently read that cloud solutions are especially well received in the North American market, but not so much in Europe, and especially not in German speaking countries. Not really. You read all sorts of sources, and it seems like, at least that's how I understood it. Also, when we talked about this topic before, it seemed to be at least partly due to cultural reasons. But as you just said, and as your experience confirms, there really are things that need to be looked at. And I think it's always this back and forth, which you can't really resolve as simply right or wrong. But what's important is to consider, how much do I give up, how much standardization, and how much do I need to keep for myself? There are all kinds of different perspectives on this, and depending on the industry, there are very different opinions about it. And I think, as you said, it's obvious with the workshops. It's already a starting point to, I don't even want to call it sensitivity, but rather to understand the real background.
Some of these are simply things that aren't unimportant. When it comes to handing over purchase prices to someone else, it can be a competitive disadvantage if that information falls into the wrong hands. These are definitely things you need to consider when it comes to data governance. How will I handle exactly this kind of data in the future, and how do I make sure it stays secure?
Yes, that's a very important point. And from my own experience as well, even when we're helping clients, especially in sales and or procurement, particularly in procurement, also at the BME with the upcoming symposium in Berlin in the next few days, this topic will come up again. That's why I completely understand why you're emphasizing this so much. It's not just about competitive disadvantages, it can even have legal consequences under antitrust law. So it's a very important point. But I understand that this is exactly why you go into workshops to, well, fear of contact sounds a bit dramatic, but really to shed light on all of this so you can move forward from there. What functionalities are there?
Exactly, that's right.
Which ones are there in the BTP?
That's a very good question. So, SAP provides a whole range of functionalities in the BTP in the form of services. These can be smaller services, for example, to use a business application studio in the cloud. The Business Application Studio is a development environment that lets me easily build great tools, UI5 and Fiori applications, in other words, web applications for the browser. But there are also definitely larger, more complex services. I just mentioned the integration suite is a very complex solution for handling integration. The integration suite will also replace SAP PMPO in the future. PI and PO will reach end of maintenance at the end of 2027. That means from that point on, customers will have to consider how they want to handle integration going forward. And one option could be to switch to the successor product on SAP BTP, namely the integration suite. And besides the SAP integration suite, there are other larger services you might have already heard of. Analytics Cloud, for example, is a major software as a service solution for analyzing company data. These can be company data that I collect not only in my ERP system, but also from all the OMS systems connected to my SAP BTP, including non SAP systems.
Analytics Cloud. So that's also a very exciting topic. We have a lot of experience with that, including with manufacturing execution systems, where you can also pull data from there, like work progress, error rates, and quality metrics, and then possibly display them directly on monitors in the production area, along with various other applications. So, a very exciting topic, one you could do an entire podcast about. Maybe we will at some point. A very tangible example. Are there any others who are implementing this? Those were already the main ones.
I think a major point that should be addressed is the topic of application development. That's an issue a lot of customers ask me about. How should I handle future development of extensions or new applications? With SAP BT, I have the ability to implement applications in the cloud. which of course at first sounds like a bit more effort because now I'm developing something separately in the cloud. I have to manage and maintain another system and connect it via interfaces. Accordingly, I connect them. But of course, that also brings new opportunities for me. With BTP, I still have the option to implement ABAP. That means if I already have skilled ABAP developers in my company, I can continue to use them. And they can build the new applications in the cloud. But in the cloud, I also have the option to use, for example, Java or JavaScript. That means I have a whole new way for people who maybe haven't developed in the SAP world before or couldn't really get into it to now build applications on SAP BTP. And in this way, they can extend business processes without having to rely on the classic ABAP stack, which is a really great opportunity, both for businesses and for people, in my opinion.
I would sign off on that right away. That's definitely a point. What does that mean? It opens up the market. We already have too few experts for many topics, even if that might not feel obvious to some people right now. But you know it yourself, and I know it too from experience, from projects. I also see it as a huge advantage, not just increasing the frequency of contact for people who maybe haven't necessarily avoided SAP until now, but just haven't had any exposure to it. And simply also the foundation, Brovnet. So, a really good use case. It's great that this is possible. I don't know if everyone caught that, but that's a real advantage, even for customers.
Definitely. I have many customers who, up until now, had development teams that weren't working in the SAP ecosystem. They just implemented their Java applications or Node.js applications. Now they can develop together with the SAP teams in the cloud and jointly advance the business processes, which is a really great thing.
And in the end, as you said, it's all about making sure the process is.
Exactly.
That's just how it is.